When Power Turns Deadly, The Political Assassination of Benazir Bhutto. Rawalpindi, Pakistan, December 27, 2007. The streets are alive with cheers. Crowds surround a white SUV carrying a woman who was more than just a politician. She was a symbol of hope. Benazir Bhutto, Pakistan's first female prime minister, stood through the sunroof of her car, waving at her supporters. And then, a gun. An explosion. Screams fill the air as chaos swallows the moment. When the smoke cleared, the world realized that one of its bravest leaders had just been silenced forever. But who wanted her dead? And why? To answer that, we must rewind, back to a story of power, betrayal, family legacy, and the deadly game of politics. Benazir Bhutto's story didn't begin in politics. It began in privilege. She was born in 1953 into one of Pakistan's most powerful families. Her father, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, was a wealthy landowner who later became the Prime Minister of Pakistan. From a young age, Benazir was groomed for leadership. Unlike many girls in her country at the time, she went abroad for education. She studied at Harvard University, then at Oxford, rubbing shoulders with world leaders in the making. She was intelligent, confident, and carried herself like someone destined for history books. But destiny was cruel. When she returned to Pakistan, she found her father at the peak of his power. Yet power in Pakistan was always fragile, always dangerous. In 1977, a military coup led by General Zia-ul-Haq toppled her father's government. Zulfikar Bhutto was arrested, accused of crimes, and eventually executed. For Benazir, it was a turning point. Her father's death didn't break her, it made her stronger. She promised herself she would continue his legacy, no matter the risk. Benazir stepped into politics at a time when her country was suffocating under dictatorship. Military rule cruised, heat opposition. Political leaders were jailed or silenced. But Benazir refused to be quiet. She became the voice of the people, especially the poor and powerless. Crowds gathered to see her. They called her Daughter of the East. Her courage, her charisma, and her famous family name made her unstoppable. In 1988, after years of struggle, Benazir Bhutto made history. She became the first woman prime minister of Pakistan. For millions of women across the Muslim world, it was a moment of pride. She wasn't just a politician. She was a symbol that women could lead, even in the toughest societies. But power came with enemies. Benazir's government faced endless challenges: corruption scandals, economic troubles, and constant battles with the military that had once killed her father. She was ousted twice, accused of corruption. Some said her husband, Asif Ali Zardari, was involved in shady deals. Others believed the accusations were politically motivated. Whatever the truth, one fact remained. Every time she was pushed out, she came back stronger. By the early 2000s, she was living in exile, far away from her homeland. But even from abroad, her presence haunted Pakistan's rulers. The people still loved her. The crowds still waited for her. And eventually, she decided she had to return, knowing it could cost her life. By 2007, Pakistan was boiling. Terrorism was rising. Military rule was unpopular. The country was desperate for hope. And Benazir Bhutto was ready to return, knowing the risks, knowing the threats, and knowing that powerful enemies were waiting for her. She believed she could save Pakistan. But what she didn't know was that her final chapter had already been written. For nearly a decade, Benazir Bhutto lived far away from her homeland. Exile was painful. She missed her people, her cities, and her country's dusty streets filled with vendors, music, and life. Yet she also knew something dangerous. Every year away from Pakistan made her weaker in politics. Her party needed her. The people still called her name. By 2007, the world was watching Pakistan. Terrorist attacks shook its cities. Dictator General Pervez Musharraf ruled with iron fists. The economy was strained. People whispered for change, for hope, for leadership. And then came the news. Benazir Bhutto was returning. Crowds cheered. Songs were written. Her face appeared on banners. For her supporters, it was not just politics. It was a rebirth of hope. But her enemies sharpened their knives. A dangerous homecoming. On October 18, 2007, Benazir Bhutto's plane touched down in Karachi. It was midnight, but the city didn't sleep. Streets were packed with people, men, women, children, chanting her name. Jai Bhutto! Long live Bhutto! The crowd was so massive that her convoy moved slower than walking speed. It wasn't just a welcome, it was a declaration. Pakistan wanted her back, but danger was in the air. Intelligence officials had already warned her. Terrorists were planning to kill her. She even wrote to foreign leaders, saying if she was assassinated, people inside Pakistan's government might be to blame. Still, she refused to hide. She stood tall, smiling, waving from her armored truck. She believed no bullet, no bomb, could silence the will of the people. The attack. Then, just hours after her arrival, the nightmare came. Her convoy rolled through the crowd. Suddenly, 2 explosions tore through the night. A suicide bomber had struck. Flames shot into the air. Shattered glass rained down. Screams echoed across Karachi. Benazir was pulled to safety inside her vet, Hickley. But outside, chaos consumed everything. Over 140 people were killed. Hundreds more were injured. The streets were littered with bodies, smoke, and fire. It was one of the deadliest attacks in Pakistan's history. And yet, Benazir survived. Her enemies had tried to end her journey on day 1, but her survival made her even more powerful. To the people, it felt like destiny was protecting her. To her enemies, it meant they had to try again. Bhutto speaks. The next day, Benazir addressed her nation. Her voice was calm, but her words were heavy. They want to stop democracy. They want to silence your voice. But we will not give up. We will not be afraid. Her bravery inspired millions. But those close to her noticed something else. Fear creeping into her eyes. She knew what she had escaped. She knew what could come again. Privately, she told friends, "I have prepared myself for martyrdom." Between hope and fear, the weeks after her return were filled with rallies, speeches, and endless travel. Everywhere she went, crowds poured into the streets. Old men cried, women clapped, children shouted her name. She promised democracy. She promised to fight corruption. She promised to challenge terrorism. But every rally also carried whispers. Would she make it home alive? Security forces begged her to stay inside armored vehicles. Friends urged her to stop public appearances. But Benazir refused. She said leaders must walk among their people, not hide behind walls. It was that decision, the choice to be close to her people, that made her beloved. And it was the same choice that placed her directly in the line of fire. Enemies all around. Benazir was not facing one enemy. She was facing many. Terrorist groups saw her as a threat because she promised to fight extremism. Corrupt politicians feared her return would expose their secrets. And powerful figures in Pakistan and security establishment, sometimes called the deep state, feared her rising popularity could weaken their grip. This mix of enemies made her one of the most targeted leaders in the world. Every day was a gamble. Every rally could be her last. Still, she pressed on. She told her followers that change was worth any risk. She told them democracy was worth dying for. By December 2007, the election was near. Benazir Bhutto was closer than ever to regaining power. Her supporters believed she would win. Her enemies knew the same, and they were desperate to stop her. On December 27th, she stood once more through the sunroof of her white SUV, waving to a sea of supporters in Rawalpindi. The crowd cheered, flags waved, hope was alive. But somewhere in that same crowd, death was waiting.